the Cosmetic Podcast.
This podcast amplifies the topics you want to hear about.
Cosmetic means being a person or thing that gives rise to a phenomenon that is dynamic or energizing.
Globally minded and locally focused.
I'm Rodrigo Ross.
I'm Keith Benson.
So today we are talking about voting is your voice. And this whole idea of voting being everyone's right, responsibility, and you should treat it as such.
So, but this whole thing on Tuesday voting.
Tuesday. Why is it on a Tuesday? I would have picked like a Thursday or something.
You know, like Chris Rock said it best. Like they don't want you to vote. He said if they did, we wouldn't vote on Tuesday. He said in November. It says you ever thrown a party on a Tuesday?
No.
Right? You know, so because nobody would come to a party on Tuesday.
So you are taking your theory of voting from Chris Rock?
I'm just saying. So, you asked about, why Tuesday. So you got to know what America was back then, right?
Okay.
And so these traditions have come all the way to where we are today. So in 1845, the Tuesday after the first Monday in November was established for the presidential elections.
Okay.
1875, they were adopted for electing U.S. House members.
Okay.
And then 1914 were applied to electing senators when the direct election of them began.
Okay.
All right. So this whole thing on Tuesday. So believe it or not, it was centered all around convenience.
Okay.
And so, but you got to, again, understand 19th century America in order to understand this. So most Americans back then were farmers,
right?
Devoutly Christian, and needed time to travel. So back then, the roads were not paved. And so, the polling locations, they were so wide, they were not as dense as they are today.
Okay.
They were a little further away, and people had to travel. And so you think about, so Sundays, being that they were devout Christians, Sundays was out because people had to go to church.
Yep.
People had to get to the county seat to vote, and automobiles were not an option like it is today.
Yeah.
And so, that factored into this whole thing centered around Tuesday.
So it took them from... So they wouldn't go on Sunday, so they would leave on Monday and conceivably not get to the polling location until Tuesday. And there you go.
There you go. And so, but then this thing about November then. So why November?
Why November?
So spring was planting season.
Yeah.
Summer was taken up by working in the fields and tending to the crops.
Yeah.
But by November, the fall harvest was over by that time. And so in most of the country, the weather was still mild enough to permit travel on the unpaved roads.
Oh.
So paved roads are a good thing for us.
That is fascinating. Who would have thought? Oh, that's November. What? Okay.
The reason that you got to vote is so that you can have those paved roads because fix some of these potholes that's around town going on right now.
Listen, vote. Yes.
Vote.
So, couple of fun facts about the whole voting process, right? So, voting in 1789, the Constitution granted states the ability to set all of these voting requirements, right? So, it was up to the states to decide how you vote, who could vote. And most of them at that time just decided that if you owned property or you paid taxes, then you were eligible to vote, right? Mm-hmm. And so over the course of the years, in 1792, they kind of got rid of the property qualification for white men only. Everyone else, though, you still had to own property and pay taxes in order to vote. Then down in 1870, the 15th Amendment of the United States prevented states from denying the right to vote for race, color, or previous condition of servitude, right? So that was 1870. But it wasn't until 1965 that the Voting Rights Act made it illegal when the federal government said, okay, look, that's it. We're protecting voter registration, voter rights, and that minorities are able to vote. And then this spilled into all demographics having the ability to vote. But this kind of struggle and this tug of war between the federal government and the states goes on even up until today. Up until 2013, the Supreme Court had to rule that Section 4B in the Voting Rights Act was unconstitutional, and local governments can't just change their voting laws whenever they want to.
Man, and so there's a lot of people that's getting around this whole concept of getting out to vote.
Yeah.
I'm amazed right now at LeBron James. He has an organization called More Than a Vote. And he's gathered so many different athletes to come around him to be able to push out this opportunity for people to give their voice to voting.
Right. And there's so many young people who look to them as superheroes, so to speak, and they really are influencers and they make it cool to vote. I'll tell you about my first time voting. So I was so excited. I was 18 years old, ready to go vote, had registered. My mom took me to the polls. We went down there and we voted. I don't even remember who I voted for or what I was voting for at the time, but you could not tell me that I was not a full-fledged adult. And then on our way back home, you know, my mom was just quiet. We got to the house and we got to see now, okay, go in there and wash those dishes and do this and do that. I said, hey, I just voted. She looked at me like, and I committed to washing dishes.
And there you go.
But I was so excited at 18 years old because I really felt like this was my time to lend my voice, like someone was listening to my opinion.
Right. I always made it a point as my kids were growing up to take them to the polls with me because I wanted to make sure that I didn't want to do it just at 18, right? Because at that point, it's like, I got to convince them probably.
Right.
But ever since they were young, we would go before I would take them to school and they would, whether one was in my arm and one was holding on to my pocket, they went with us to be able to vote because I wanted to make sure that they had a voice into what's going on in their community.
Right.
And so when you think about, young people and voting, being that they are too young to vote, there are different ways that they can take some action.
And
right?
There is statistics that tell us in the 2020 election, between 2010 and 2020, 25 million young people have come of age and are now eligible to vote. Like, do you know what kind of an impact that will make in the process? And if you haven't really helped teach them and help guide them and help instill those skills, man, have we missed an opportunity.
So there's some ways that we can help make sure the kids have a voice, even though they may not be old enough to vote. So one of the things is that we can discuss current events, things that are going on in the community. One of those ways that we have within the YMCA is we have the program Youth in Government.
Right.
And so young people understand what's going on today. And so in this mock concept with Youth in Government, they're able to create different bills and they're able to debate those things. But discussing current events is one way, engaging them into service learning. And then it's also the practicing of voting.
Yeah, we did a practice voting. So we were picking Kool-Aid flavors.
Okay.
And so we had all of these different flavors. And of course, every kid had their own opinion. And so we had a for real election for them to pick our signature flavor that summer. And it was amazing how excited these kids were and how they had these, what they thought were really legitimate arguments about why one flavor should win over another. But that was really fascinating to see kids engaged in the process and learning that, you can make a difference.
But you're setting them up early for that opportunity to be able to understand that when they get 18, I need to have a voice.
Right. And to go back and remind their parents, did you vote? Did you vote? Did you vote?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I make sure that when my kids went off to college that, hey, we're going to make sure either you're going to come home and vote. Which one are you going to do? You're going to come home?
Or you're going to get an absentee ballot.
We're going to do it one way or another. You're going to vote this year.
Yeah.
And Park Southwide, you guys have election opportunity here.
Right.
What does that look like for you on that day?
So that means that every time there's an election, whether it's local or federal, we transform our lobby or our gym into a polling place. And so, we really strive to make this YMCA the third place, right? You have home, you have church, and you have the Y. Mm-hmm. And we want people to know they can come up to their Y. It's right here in their community. However you vote, that's really up to you. But the opportunity is there. We want to catch members as they're coming in. Even if you weren't thinking or if this wasn't in your plan for the day, it's right here. It's available to you. And we really want to stress the importance in under-resourced communities. This is how you make a voice for what you need, what you deserve, what you require is by getting out there and engaging in the voting process.
One of the things we would do when at a Y that I was at in Charlotte, man, the election day was a big day. I mean, so we knew the lines were going to be long.
Yeah.
We would set up coffee stations. We're getting out there greeting folk, making sure that this experience is one that they will always remember about coming in and voting, because it is really that important to making that change in our community.
To making that change. And so, you know, I still to this day, even my peers, sometimes I can't believe how I really have to encourage. People get discouraged and they get disenfranchised when things aren't quite going the way that they think they should go, and they just want to tap out, right? Like, forget it. I'm not going to do anything. But numbers, even in our last elections, will tell you that elections could have been totally different if these huge amounts of people would have just gone out and voted. However you vote, just participate in the process.
Well, because the thing is that when you think about voting, let's talk about the local election. I mean, we talked about just a moment ago about the potholes that you see all the way around. Well, if you vote, that can make a change. You got somebody that you can call on to say, hey, council member, hey, this is what's going on in my community. I mean, I use my
or hold accountable. I called about the pothole.
Right.
You didn't do anything. Okay, clearly you don't have my best interest in mind. We need to get someone else in there.
I tell you what, I remember one time I had something going on. Somebody dug up something in my yard. The city had dug up something in my yard, and I called my council member, and I was a little bit shocked that, like, wow, she responded to me like the next day. I was like, okay, this stuff works.
I feel fancy.
Exactly. And so, I mean, hey, people, those who are listening, hey, if you're registered to vote, great. But if you're not, please go out and register to vote. That's one thing.
And don't let barriers stand in the way. Really research, ask the questions. Don't just believe at face value if someone tells you you don't have the ability or the right to vote. There are so many ways for you to make sure that your voice is heard during any kind of local or federal elections. And we want to hear from you.
And what I want to have happen, though, is that take somebody with you to vote.
Yeah.
So make sure that person that may be on the fence, go get that person. Make sure. And hey, you don't have to stand in line that long day on that Tuesday, right? Like, do it early. I found that
early voting. I
convenient.
love early voting.
Yes.
And now they give you stickers.
I know.
What?
I wear my sticker proud, and I'm posting it on all of my social media. So appreciate you listening to the Cosmetic Podcast,
where our conversations are
globally minded and locally focused.
Give us some feedback and tell us about your voting rituals at ymcadallas.org/cosmetic.
And as always,
stay dynamic,
stay energized,
stay cosmetic.